Yeah, good morning, students. So, in the previous class, we had a discussion on while loop and as well as do while loop. So, while loop is an example for a entry control loop, and do while loop is an example for a exit control loop. So, which is also called it as the post test loop, we can call it as. Now, in this today's classroom discussion topic, we will discuss regarding this entry control loop, another important entry control loop, which is called it as a for loop. We are going to discuss that. So now I would like to share my screen. So here the looping statements, under that the C language is providing three important categories of the loops. So one is while loop, and other one is do while loop, and the third one is for loop. So this particular session we are going to discuss about this uh, for loop. We are going to discuss that. So the objectives of this session is that this session will develop the students' knowledge on looping statements such as a for loop statement. So if you see that the general syntax for the for loop statement goes like this. Every loop earlier in the classroom discussion topic itself, we saw that every loop will have these three important parts. One is which we can call it as initialization part, and another one is a test condition, and the third one which we can call it as a updating statement, either incrementation or decrementation of this loop statement, loop control, incrementation or decrementation of the looping statement or looping variable will be there basically. So in this particular for loop, all these three parts, what we are doing here is that we are placing it one place, separated with the semicolon. Initialization, then semicolon, text expression, which we can also call it as condition, then semicolon, then updating. That is either incrementation or decrementation of the condition variable. Then this is curly brace begin and curly brace end, where we are making use of this set of statements, which constitutes the body of this for loop. So this is what we are calling it as the flow chart for this for loop. So initialization will be there. It is exactly executed only once when we are entering into this for loop first time. From second iteration onwards, this initialization will not be executed. Only the test expression, based on that test expression, if it is true, then it will continue the body of the execution. Fine. So initialization, then test expression. If test expression is true, then statements will be executed. Then updating of this looping variable, and then testing the condition, text expression. So this, as long as this condition is true, this body of the for loop is going to be executed. When the condition is false, then we will exit from this loop body. So as similar to this while loop, same syntax is there for this for loop also. So this is very important note here. The for loop is used when a loop is to be executed a known number of times. Suppose if I want to execute 10 times or 5 times, 6 times, like that, the number of iterations are known prior. It is better to use for loop. So we can do the same thing with a while loop, but the for loop is easier to read and more natural for counting loops. So this is a comparison between a for loop statement and a while loop statement. Here in this we have initialization, and then while expression or a condition, we can call it as, or a text expression. Then these are the set of statements or actions which we are performing. Then we are updating this condition variable. Okay, so this constitutes the body of the loop. Okay, this constitutes the body of the while loop. Now similarly here, if you take the for loop, so for loop, this initialization is coming here, and then this condition is coming. Okay, so then this update statement is coming here. So all the three parts we are putting at one place and separating with the semicolons basically. Then curly brace begin and curly brace close. Here whatever the actions we have, So the same actions we are putting here in the body of this for loop. So this is what the syntactical comparison between this while loop and a for loop. Now if you take an example here, so same program I wrote here using the while loop. So the same program we have written here using the what we are calling it as a using the for loop. So for c equal to 5, so that is what initialization. C greater than or equal to c greater than 0, this is what condition, and this is what we are calling it as c minus minus. So this is what we are calling it as uh, the incrementation or decrementation statement. So the point to note here is thus here in this for loop we can skip the initial value expression, condition, and or increment by adding a semicolon. Just we can skip all the three parts. We can simply write a semicolon like this a for loop. So there is no initialization, no condition, no updation, incrementation and decrementation statement. So it is also a valid statement, but it may be executed this body infinite times. Fine. So if the condition is not properly there, it may lead to the infinite loop. Now this is the reflection part one here. Identify the valid usage of the for loop. So all these anyone may guess what are this. So this is based on the syntax or usage of this for loop. So all these five different usages are there here. So here we are missing all the three parts. Yes, it is a valid. Here we have initialization, and then here we have initialization and then condition. This updation statement will be within the body, it may be present, so it is also valid. So here we have only condition and updation. So initialization is, it may be present prior to this loop statement. So all the three parts will be there within this, and here only condition is there. We skipped this initialization as well as the updated statements. So all these five are a valid usage of this for loop. Now the lecture outcomes are revisited here. So this session will develop the students' knowledge on usage of how a for loop statement can be used. So summary of the student session is that the purpose of the loop is to repeat the same code number of times. So a loop is consisting of two parts, which is called it as a body of the loop, and then we have a conditional statement. Condition will be there. So the condition, which can call it as a control statement, is a combination of some conditions that direct the body of the loop to execute until the specified condition becomes false. And these are the three important types of loops that the C language is supporting for us: while loop, do while loop, and for loop. So this while and for is called it as entry control loops, and do while is called it as exit control loops. So now the lecture outcomes is that after completion of the session, student will able to develop the code in C language using different types of looping statements. So the lecture level practice problem is that this is one problem given here. So if you are given a number, integer number, develop a C program using for loop to find the sum of the digits in a given number. So that means here if you are given this number, you have to find 9 plus 8 plus 5 plus 2 plus 3 summation, so which is equal to 27. So sum of the digits in a given number. So any doubts you have in this particular session, dear students? So if you don't have any doubts, now I can able to stop this session. Okay. So thank you, one and all.